A desert is a place of brutal extremes, yet ancient people built impossible things there. This is the story of blueprints in the sand, how civilizations mastered the harshest environments on Earth. You will learn the forgotten engineering secrets that allowed them to create thriving cities and monumental architecture with almost nothing. How did they find water where none seemed to exist? And what hidden knowledge allowed their structures to stand for millennia? Their solutions to survival hold urgent lessons for our own world today. What does true ingenuity look like when failure is not an option? Survival in the desert was a daily negotiation with the impossible. Every resource was measured, every decision a matter of life and death. This scarcity, however, did not breed mere survivalism. It forged a unique kind of genius. The relentless sun and shifting sands became a crucible of innovation, forcing engineers to see the world differently. Where others saw only barren rock and empty valleys, they saw potential. A limitation was not an endpoint, but a challenge to be re-engineered. This mindset produced systems of breathtaking efficiency. Water management was not a luxury. It was the entire foundation of civilization. Temperature control was not about comfort, but about preserving life and food. Material transport was a puzzle of physics, not just brute strength, as historian Dr. Elena Petrova explains, desert civilizations did not just adapt to their world. They redefined what was possible through necessity-driven innovation. The very harshness of the desert, its unforgiving nature, acted as a catalyst. It stripped away the non-essential and focused the mind on pure, elegant solutions. This is why their blueprints are so extraordinary. They are not just buildings or canals. They are manifestations of a philosophy born from extreme pressure. This foundational understanding of desert ingenuity leads us directly to their first and most vital miracle, the mastery of water itself. The mastery of water began deep underground. In the heart of the Persian plateau, engineers devised a system so brilliant it would defy the desert for thousands of years. This was the Qanat, a network of tunnels that acted like a subterranean river, all flowing by the silent, unwavering pull of gravity. The concept was deceptively simple, yet its execution was a monumental feat of collective labor. Workers would first locate a water source at the base of a mountain, where groundwater collected like a secret reservoir. From there, they would begin carving a gently sloping tunnel back towards their village, sometimes for dozens of miles. The genius was in the slope, a precise calculation that allowed water to flow steadily without eroding the tunnel walls. But how did they build something so vast and complex without modern tools? The answer lies in the vertical shafts. Every 100 feet or so, a shaft was dug straight down from the surface to the tunnel below. These shafts provided air for the diggers, removed excavated earth, and most importantly, served as permanent access points for cleaning and repairs for generations to come. From the air, a Qanat system looks like a line of perfect craters marching across the landscape, a dotted line drawn by human ingenuity pointing directly to life. This technology transformed entire regions. In Iran, cities like Yazd and Gonabad flourished solely because of the water brought by Qanats, creating lush gardens and thriving communities in the middle of barren plains. The knowledge spread along trade routes, reaching Oman, North Africa, and even Spain, where it was known as the Falaj or the Acequia. These were not just water channels, they were the very arteries of civilization, delivering a constant, reliable pulse of life. The Qanat required no pumps, no external power, only a profound understanding of the land. It was a sustainable system in the truest sense, tapping only the natural recharge of the aquifer. This ancient answer to a timeless problem poses a powerful question for our modern world, where energy-intensive desalination plants and over-pumped wells are the norm. What if our solutions to water scarcity could be this elegant, this quiet, and this enduring? The Qanat shows us that the most advanced technology is sometimes the one that works in perfect harmony with nature. And while some societies mastered the flow of water, others learned to capture it from an even more elusive source, the sky itself. While the Qanat worked with the Earth's hidden reservoirs, other civilizations perfected the art of capturing water directly from the sky. The Nabateans, the brilliant architects of the city of Petra, turned their entire environment into a massive water collection device. Walking through the narrow, towering Sick Canyon today, you see the famous rock-cut tombs, but the true marvels are almost invisible. They are the subtle channels carved into the cliff walls, the cleverly placed dams, and the networks of terracotta pipes that transformed occasional flash floods into a life-giving resource. The Nabateans understood that in the desert, a sudden downpour was not a blessing but a threat, a violent surge of water that could destroy as easily as it could nourish. Their genius was in taming that chaos. They studied the landscape with the eye of a master engineer, identifying natural fractures in the rock that could be widened into channels. They built diversion dams to redirect floodwaters away from the city center and into a meticulously planned system. Gravity did the rest, carrying water through pipes and channels to vast underground cisterns carved directly into the bedrock. These were not small containers, they were massive reservoirs, some capable of holding millions of gallons, ensuring a supply that could last through years of drought. This hidden infrastructure is what made Petra's grandeur possible. The water supported a population of thousands, irrigated gardens, and supplied the caravans that made Petra a wealthy nexus of trade. It was a closed-loop system of incredible efficiency, where every single drop of rain was accounted for and utilized. How did they achieve such precision without modern hydrology? The answer lies in a deep, patient observation of the land itself, a knowledge passed down through generations. Their system stands as a testament to a different kind of strength, not the force to resist nature, but the intelligence to work with its rhythms. This philosophy of integrated urban planning, where water management was the invisible foundation of every structure, finds a stunning parallel halfway across the world, in the deserts of South America. The mastery of water was only the beginning. To build a city in the desert, you must also master the air itself. In the sands of ancient Egypt, far from the life-giving Nile, pharaohs envisioned capitals that rose with breathtaking speed. The city of Amarna, commissioned by the visionary pharaoh Akhenaten, stands as a testament to this ambition. Its ruins reveal a blueprint not just for buildings, but for an entire environment engineered for human comfort. The city's main streets were not laid out at random. They were precisely aligned to catch the prevailing north wind, channeling every possible breeze into the heart of the settlement like a natural ventilation system. This was urban planning on a grand, almost biological scale where the city itself could breathe. Egyptian surveyors, using simple tools like sighting rods and leveled cords, achieved an astonishing accuracy. They carved a perfect grid into the desert floor, a geometric plan that optimized shade and airflow for every structure. The orientation of each building was a calculated decision. Walls were positioned to maximize shadow during the hottest parts of the day, while courtyards were designed to act as cooling wells, where hot air would rise and be replaced by cooler air from the surrounding rooms. The very materials they chose were part of this ingenious system. Thick mud-brick walls acted as thermal mass, absorbing the sun's heat during the day and slowly releasing it in the cool of the night, effectively smoothing out the extreme temperature swings. Inside, it was a world apart from the blistering heat outside. How did they know exactly where the sun would fall in every season? Artifacts and texts suggest a deep, studied understanding of astronomy and shadow. They tracked the sun's path across the year, using this knowledge to design roof overhangs and window placements that blocked the high summer sun but allowed the lower, warming winter light to penetrate. This was not guesswork. It was applied solar science, a form of passive climate control that supported a dense urban population in one of the most arid regions on Earth. The comfort of Amarna's residents was a direct result of this architectural wisdom, a silent dialogue between human design and natural forces. This raises a profound question about the very substance of their cities. If their urban plans were so advanced, what of the materials they built with? The humble mud brick, often seen as a primitive material, held secrets of its own, secrets that would be perfected by another desert civilization in the American Southwest. Far from the stone monuments of Egypt, another desert civilization mastered comfort with the very earth beneath their feet. The Pueblo peoples of the American Southwest built entire cities from adobe, a simple mixture of mud, water, and straw. These were not primitive huts, but complex, multi-story structures that rose from the desert floor like extensions of the land itself. At places like Choco Canyon, the great houses were engineered with a sophisticated understanding of the sun's path. Their massive walls, sometimes several feet thick, were made of sun-dried adobe bricks. This material acted as a natural insulator, absorbing the desert's intense heat during the day and slowly releasing it throughout the cold night, creating a remarkably stable indoor temperature year-round. The architecture itself was a precise solar instrument. Builders carefully aligned entire settlements to capture the low, warming rays of the winter sun, while using strategic overhangs to block the high, scorching summer sun. This passive solar design was not an afterthought. It was the foundation of their entire building philosophy. Every choice was rooted in sustainability. They used local materials, which meant no energy was wasted on long-distance transport. The construction itself was a communal effort, with designs that fostered social cohesion. Rooms were arranged around central plazas, and the intricate layouts encouraged interaction and shared life. The true testament to their genius is endurance. Many of these structures have weathered centuries of extreme heat, freezing winters, and torrential rains, standing long after many modern buildings would have crumbled. Archaeologists see in these ruins not just abandoned homes, but a blueprint for resilience. This raises a pressing question for our own time, an era of energy-intensive heating and cooling systems. What if we look to these ancient principles for green building today? The Pueblo approach demonstrates that true sustainability is not about adding complex technology, but about integrating intelligent design with the natural world from the very start. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that the most advanced material is sometimes the most humble one, perfected by time and wisdom. But stone and water were not the only resources these societies mastered. In the vast emptiness of the Libyan Sahara, a civilization emerged that rivaled the great cultures of the Nile. The Garamantes turned the world's largest desert into their kingdom. From their capital at Jerma, they commanded a network of fortified villages connected by an underground web of fagaras, their own version of the Qanat. These tunnels tapped into ancient fossil water, creating a green belt of agriculture in the heart of the Sand Sea. Yet their most enduring legacy is written in stone. They built not with mud brick but with massive slabs of rock, constructing elaborate tombs and temples that still stand against the sky. The true marvel is how they built them. The Garamantes used a dry stone technique, fitting enormous blocks together with such precision that they required no mortar to hold them for centuries. How do you move a multi-ton stone slab across shifting dunes without wheels or beasts of burden? Their solution was one of elegant physics. They crafted sturdy wooden sleds and placed them on paths of smoothed rollers. Teams of workers could then haul these colossal weights across great distances, a testament to coordinated human effort. This was not mere construction, it was a form of cultural expression. Inscriptions found at their sites speak of chiefs and engineers, suggesting a society that celebrated the mastery of the physical world. Their achievements shatter the old stereotype of isolated, simple desert dwellers. The Garamantes created monumentality on a scale that could stand beside any forest or riverine culture of the time. This raises a fundamental question about power and organization. How did they mobilize the labor and resources for such ambitious projects in such profound isolation? The answer lies not just in engineering skill, but in a sophisticated social structure capable of planning and executing grand visions over generations. This organizational genius, the ability to coordinate people and materials across a harsh landscape, would become the bedrock for something even more expansive, a network that would eventually connect distant worlds. The Garamantes proved that isolation was no barrier to monumental ambition, but another desert civilization mastered the art of connection. Across the vast, empty quarter of the Arabian Peninsula, the true monuments were not cities of stone, but a chain of way stations that made the impossible journey possible. This was the Incense route, a network of trade paths where caravans carried precious frankincense and myrrh for thousands of miles. The lifeblood of this entire system was the Caravanserai, a fortress of hospitality rising from the dunes. Think of it not just as an inn, but as a complete logistical hub, an artificial oasis engineered for survival. Builders designed these complexes with staggering foresight. Thick, high walls shielded inhabitants from blistering winds and blowing sand. Inside, a central courtyard provided a safe, open space for camels to rest and be unloaded. Deep storage pits were dug into the ground to keep water and food supplies cool, acting as natural refrigerators. Security was paramount, with a single, heavily fortified gate that could be sealed against raiders. The Caravanserai was a machine for commerce, a node in a vast network that stretched from southern Arabia to the markets of the Mediterranean. The economic prosperity this network generated was immense, funding the rise of powerful kingdoms like the Nabateans and enabling the construction of their legendary rock-cut cities. The success of this system poses a critical question for our own era of global supply chains. How do you sustain trade across some of the most hostile geography on the planet? The answer was redundancy and reliability. A caravan knew that at the end of a grueling day's march, a secure haven awaited. This predictability turned a perilous gamble into a manageable, though still demanding, enterprise. But placing these way stations in the correct location required more than just architectural skill. It demanded a way to navigate a landscape with no permanent landmarks, a sea of sand that shifted with every storm. Navigating the shifting emptiness of the desert required a map written not on parchment, but in the stars themselves. When every dune could be reshaped by the next storm, travelers needed a fixed and reliable guide, and they found it in the eternal dance of the night sky. The Bedouin and other desert peoples became masters of celestial navigation, developing an intimate knowledge of the cosmos that was as practical as it was profound. They did not see the stars as distant lights, but as landmarks on an infinite map. They knew which constellations rose over specific hidden wells, and how the position of certain stars indicated the direction of a distant mountain pass. This knowledge was a living library, passed orally from one generation to the next in the form of poems and stories, ensuring that a traveler could find their way even in the most featureless terrain. It was a science of observation built on centuries of watching how star paths correlated with wind patterns and even the subtle shapes of sand dunes. This cosmic awareness left physical marks on the landscape. Across many desert regions, archaeologists have discovered simple yet effective stone alignments. These circles or lines of rocks were not random. They functioned as permanent astronomical observatories, allowing navigators to track the solstices or pinpoint the rising of a key star with remarkable accuracy. These artifacts reveal a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. Long before the invention of the telescope, the ability to traverse such vast distances with confidence was the final, crucial piece that bound the desert world together. It allowed for the establishment of trade routes like the Incense Trail and enabled the communication between far-flung oases that sustained entire civilizations. This deep connection to the heavens inevitably shaped their cultural identity. The stars were not just tools, they were part of a sacred geography. Myths and legends were woven around constellations, embedding practical knowledge within a rich cultural tapestry. The sky was a constant companion, a calendar for planting, a clock for travel, and a testament to the order of the universe. This cosmic awareness supported their terrestrial engineering feats by providing the absolute orientation needed to plan a Qanat's gentle slope over miles or to align a city with the prevailing winds. Their mastery of the celestial realm was the invisible foundation for all their earthly accomplishments. Yet, even the most brilliant civilizations are subject to the relentless passage of time, and the very environments they so ingeniously mastered eventually presented their greatest challenge. These towers rising from the flat rooftops were not for defense or decoration. They were machines designed to harness the one resource the desert offered in endless supply, the wind itself. Across the Persian world, from the ancient cities of Yazd to the banks of the Nile, the badger or windcatcher transformed the relationship between architecture and climate. Its principle was a masterpiece of passive engineering. A tall, slender tower, open on one or more sides, would catch the slightest breeze high above the ground. This captured air was then funneled down the shaft and directed into the heart of the building. But the true magic happened when this airflow met water. In many homes, the windcatcher channeled air directly over a small indoor pool or an underground Qanat channel. As the dry desert wind passed over the water's surface, it would evaporate a tiny amount, a process that immediately cooled the air, sometimes by 20 degrees or more. This newly chilled, moistened breeze would then circulate through the living spaces, creating a comfortable microclimate. The designs were brilliantly adaptive. In regions with predictable wind directions, a badger might have a single opening to face the prevailing breeze. In areas with variable winds, they were built with openings on all four sides, ensuring they could capture a draft from any direction. Some of the most sophisticated versions even had internal dampers, adjustable flaps that allowed residents to control the flow of air into different rooms. This was natural air conditioning running on zero energy, requiring only an intimate understanding of physics and the local environment. It allowed for not just comfortable living, but also for the preservation of food in specially designed cold storage rooms, a critical advantage in a land where spoilage could mean starvation. The efficiency of this system is so remarkable that modern architects and engineers are now looking back to the badger for inspiration in our own age of climate change and high energy costs. Why has such an elegant solution been largely forgotten in an era obsessed with technological fixes? The answer may lie in our shift toward powered, centralized systems that prioritize convenience over sustainability. The windcatcher stands as a quiet testament to a different approach, one where the building itself is an active partner in creating comfort. This mastery of passive climate control represents the ultimate refinement of desert engineering, a perfect marriage of form and function that turned the harsh elements into allies. But even the most ingenious structures are vulnerable to the sands of time, and the very stability these civilizations engineered would eventually face its greatest test. The mastery of wind and water reached its most profound expression not in cities, but in the cultivation of life itself. High in the arid slopes of the Negev Desert, ancient farmers performed a kind of alchemy, turning stone and infrequent rain into vineyards and olive groves. The Nabateans and later Byzantine settlers looked at these barren, rocky hillsides and saw potential where we might see only emptiness. Their tool was the humble stone wall, but its application was a stroke of genius. They built low, linear barriers that cascaded down the slopes, following the natural contours of the land. These were not dams meant to hold back water, but breaks designed to slow its inevitable journey. When the rare, precious rain did fall, it would rush down the hillsides, but instead of washing away the scant soil in a destructive torrent, it would be captured by these terraces. The water would pool briefly behind each wall, losing its speed and allowing the life-giving moisture to seep deep into the ground, saturating the soil rather than eroding it. This was runoff farming, a system of breathtaking precision. The farmers did not simply guess where to build. They calculated entire catchment areas, understanding how much land was needed to channel enough runoff to nourish a specific plot of crops. They matched soil types to particular plants, knowing which slopes could support deep-rooted olives and which were better for grapes. Archaeological surveys have revealed that this meticulous land management increased the agricultural productivity of these arid zones by as much as 10 times. Walking through the ruins of these farms today, you can still see the ghostly outlines of the terraces, a vast, silent network etched into the landscape. It stands as a powerful rebuttal to the idea of the desert as inherently barren. This was not a desperate struggle against nature, but a sophisticated partnership with it. The entire system was sustainable, relying on the natural cycle of rainfall without depleting any underground aquifers. What does this ancient precision offer modern agriculture, which often relies on massive irrigation projects that drain rivers and aquifers? The lesson is one of observation and subtlety. These farmers did not force the land to conform to their needs. They carefully adapted their needs to the land's own rhythm. Their success was built on a holistic understanding of the entire ecosystem, from the shape of a watershed to the water retention of a specific soil type. This same integrated thinking, so evident in their urban planning, was applied to the very soil, creating a legacy of resilience written not in stone, but in the land itself. Some of the most ambitious desert blueprints were drawn on a scale so vast they can only be seen by the sky. Scattered across the arid plateaus of Peru, the Nasca lines form a gallery of gigantic geometric shapes and animal figures, some stretching over 1,000 feet. The method of creation was deceptively simple yet demanded immense precision. Artists and engineers did not build up but scraped away. They meticulously removed the top layer of dark, sun-baked stones to expose the lighter, contrasting soil beneath. This technique created crisp, enduring lines, but it presented a monumental puzzle. How do you map a perfect spiral or a symmetrical spider on such an enormous scale without ever rising above the ground to check your work? The answer reveals a profound understanding of geometric principles. Researchers believe the Nasca used a system of ropes and stakes anchored to a central point, allowing small teams to transcribe massive curves and straight lines with remarkable accuracy. It was a feat of practical mathematics, a form of Earth-scale drafting. Similar mysteries are emerging in the deserts of Saudi Arabia, where massive rectangular structures known as mustatils, meaning long rectangles, dot the landscape. These complexes of low stone walls, some longer than a modern sports stadium, required the coordinated labor of hundreds of people over many months. The sheer investment of effort suggests these were not casual landmarks but places of deep cultural significance, perhaps used for communal gatherings or rituals that unified scattered desert tribes. The endurance of these designs is a testament to their engineering. The act of clearing the stones not only created a visual contrast but also altered the microenvironment of the lines themselves. The exposed, lighter soil absorbs less heat, which reduces thermal expansion and contraction, while the removed stones along the edges act as a protective barrier against wind erosion. These lines have resisted the desert's attempts to reclaim them for more than 2,000 years. This blurring of art, astronomy, and civil engineering forces us to reconsider the very purpose of such monuments. Were they celestial calendars, pathways for ritual processions, or offerings to deities believed to dwell in the heavens above? Perhaps they were all these things at once. In the desert, where survival depended on precise knowledge and communal effort, there was no separation between the practical and the sacred. The same skills needed to survey a Qanat's gentle slope were used to align a geoglyph with the solstice sun. The same social organization that built a Caravanserai could muster the workforce to etch a giant condor into the earth. These desert canvases are the ultimate expression of a civilization, so in tune with its environment that it could write its identity across the landscape itself. The desert sun offers no mercy, but in the heart of the Thar, a civilization responded not with simple wells, but with breathtaking inverted palaces. India's stepwells are monuments carved into the earth, where architecture descends to meet the water table. Chand Baori is one of the most spectacular, a geometric marvel of 3,500 steps arranged in perfect symmetry, descending over 13 stories into the cool, dark depths. This was far more than a source of water. It was a subterranean community center, a refuge from the heat, and a place of profound spiritual significance. The engineering was a masterclass in environmental adaptation. The narrow opening at the top minimized exposure to the sun and wind, drastically reducing evaporation. As you descend, the air grows noticeably cooler, a natural consequence of the deep, shaded design. Builders lined the walls with intricate galleries and pavilions, offering shaded places for people to gather, socialize, and rest. The entire structure was a passive cooling system, its very form regulating temperature and preserving its precious resource. Every surface was an opportunity for artistry. Devotional carvings of gods and goddesses covered the walls, a constant reminder of the sacred nature of water. This fusion of function and beauty transformed a utilitarian task into a daily ritual of reverence. Constructing such a feat required deep knowledge. Engineers had to accurately predict the groundwater level, ensuring their colossal excavation would actually reach water. The masonry itself was a precise science, with each stone carefully cut and set to withstand the immense pressure of the surrounding earth for centuries. How did these wells forge community resilience? They were inherently public works, funded by royalty or wealthy patrons for the benefit of all. The step well became a neutral ground where people from all walks of life would cross paths, sharing news and strengthening social bonds while performing the essential act of collecting water. This daily interaction created a shared sense of ownership and responsibility. The well's survival depended on collective upkeep, its cleanliness a matter of public health. In this way, the step well was not just a piece of infrastructure, it was the beating heart of communal life, a physical anchor that fostered the cooperation necessary for survival in a marginal environment. The knowledge required to build and maintain these structures, from hydrology to stone carving, was too valuable to be lost. It had to be carefully preserved and passed down, a living library of desert wisdom that ensured each generation could drink from the same deep well. Deep in the Sinai's mountainous heart, far from any city, a different kind of engineering project was underway. Within the fortified walls of St. Catherine's Monastery, scribes were not building with stone or water, but with ink and parchment. Their material was knowledge itself. These isolated communities became unexpected vaults, preserving the scientific and technical blueprints of antiquity through centuries of upheaval. While empires rose and fell, the relentless quiet of the desert provided a sanctuary for thought. In scriptoriums lit by oil lamps, monks meticulously copied treatises on geometry that had been formulated in the Great Library of Alexandria, works on astronomy from Babylon, and detailed manuals on Persian hydrology. Each carefully drawn diagram of a lever or a pulley, each calculation for an arch, was a thread connecting a fading past to an uncertain future. The very isolation that made life so arduous was their greatest asset, shielding them from the political fires that consumed libraries across the ancient world. Their contribution was not in originating these ideas, but in ensuring their survival. The geometric principles they preserved were the same ones that would later allow Renaissance architects to calculate the domes of Florence and the aqueducts of Rome. This raises a profound question about the nature of progress. Where do we store our most vital knowledge, and how do we protect it for generations we will never meet? The desert monks understood that civilization is not just about the monuments we build, but about the ideas we refuse to let die. Their silent, patient work created a bridge across a millennium, enabling a technological exchange they would never witness. This transmission of ideas across cultures and time is perhaps the most enduring legacy of all, a final, invisible blueprint drawn not in sand, but in the collective mind of humanity. A camel caravan moving across the Sahara was far more than a line of merchants. It was a living, breathing library on the move. Along with salt, cloth, and gold, these caravans carried something even more precious, the blueprints for new ways of living. The vast, empty desert, which seemed to separate cultures, actually became the world's first global highway, accelerating the spread of innovation between North Africa, the Middle East, and Sub-Saharan Africa. An idea perfected in one oasis could be shared and refined in another 1,000 miles away, all within a single generation. This constant flow of people and knowledge led to remarkable hybrid technologies. Imagine a well digger in a Saharan trading town. He might learn of a new, more durable pulley system from a traveler from the East, while also hearing about a stronger alloy for metal tools from a blacksmith from the South. Back at his own worksite, he would combine these insights, creating a better tool than any that existed in isolation. This was the power of the trade network. It created a melting pot of practical knowledge. Historians see these desert routes as early engines of globalization, where cultural interactions directly refined engineering practices. The famous fortified cities of the Sahel, like Timbuktu, are perfect examples of this technological blending. Their grand mosques and walls showcase a unique architecture that combines North African Islamic design with local building materials and techniques perfectly suited to the harsh Sudanian climate. This fusion was not accidental. It was the direct result of centuries of exchange along the trade routes. The constant movement of scholars, artisans, and engineers meant that best practices in everything from metallurgy to water management were shared, tested, and improved upon across a continent. How did this exchange set the stage for even grander projects? The very same networks that spread peaceful innovations would eventually carry the designs for formidable military architectures, as the need to protect these valuable trade routes sparked a new era of defensive engineering. Trade routes required protection, and the desert fortress was its ultimate expression. Rising from the plains of Oman, the Bala Fort is a city of sun-baked mud. Its high walls and labyrinthine passages a testament to a society that engineered security. This was not just a military outpost, it was a self-contained world, designed to withstand a prolonged siege while maintaining the health and morale of those inside. The choice of material was the first line of defense. Builders used thick, layered mud brick, a substance that provided exceptional insulation against the desert heat, keeping interior spaces cool even under the blazing sun. The walls were not merely high, they were angled and reinforced with projecting towers, allowing defenders to fire along the length of the fortifications, eliminating any blind spots for attackers scaling the walls. Entry was a controlled ordeal. A single, narrow gate forced any approaching force into a vulnerable bottleneck, while the path inside was often a twisting, turning corridor designed to break the momentum of a charge and expose invaders to fire from above. But the genius of these structures went beyond repelling armies. They were masterpieces of integrated civil engineering. Within the fortress walls, builders incorporated the same passive cooling principles found in cities, with windcatchers channeling breezes into living quarters and deep cisterns ensuring a lasting water supply. The fort's very location was a strategic calculation, perched to oversee a critical water source or a lucrative trade route, its presence a silent declaration of control over the lifeblood of the region. This fusion of military might and domestic ingenuity raises a timeless question about the nature of security. Is it enough to simply build strong walls, or must a fortress also sustain the lives within them? The enduring legacy of Bala and forts like it suggests that true resilience lies in this holistic approach. The need for protection, however, was often intertwined with a deeper, more spiritual yearning, leading to structures that served both God and garrison. In the highlands of Ethiopia, where the air is thin and the landscape bears the starkness of a desert, faith literally carved a new world from the ground. The churches of Lalibela were not built upward, but excavated downward, a process of reverse engineering that transformed solid volcanic rock into a complex of 11 breathtaking sanctuaries. The scale of this endeavor is almost beyond comprehension. Workers did not add stone upon stone. They removed everything that was not a church, chiseling away the earth to leave behind freestanding buildings, each one a single, continuous piece of rock. This was an act of profound belief, where every swing of the hammer was a prayer, and the risk of a single miscalculation could shatter a decade of labor. The primary challenge was not just carving, but preventing collapse. Before a single block was removed, master architects had to visualize the final structure in 3 dimensions within the rock itself. They began by cutting a deep, wide trench around the entire perimeter of the proposed church, isolating a massive block of stone. Then, with painstaking precision, they began the work of hollowing out doors, windows, columns, and domes from the inside. This required an intimate understanding of geology and stress points, ensuring the remaining rock could support its own weight for centuries. But their genius extended beyond the structures themselves to the environment. Lalibela experiences a distinct rainy season, and a church carved into a basin would quickly flood. The builders engineered an intricate network of drainage channels and canals, some stretching for hundreds of feet, to divert rainwater away from the sacred sites. These gutters, carved directly into the rock floor, are so effective they still function perfectly today, protecting the churches from erosion and water damage. How did spiritual belief drive such technical precision? The entire project was commissioned in the 12th century by King Lalibela, who sought to create a new Jerusalem for pilgrims who could no longer safely reach the Holy Land. This divine mission demanded perfection. The alignment of the churches was not arbitrary. Many are positioned to capture the first light of the sun on specific feast days, a fusion of astronomical observation and liturgical calendar. The most famous of these, the Church of St. George, is shaped like a perfect cross, its roof lying flush with the ground so that from above, it appears as a divine symbol etched into the earth. Pilgrims would descend into the trench systems, moving through narrow passageways that symbolized a spiritual journey before emerging into the grand, dimly lit interiors. This was engineering in service of an experience designed to inspire awe and reverence through its very creation. The rock-cut temples of Lalibela stand as a testament to the power of faith to conquer seemingly impossible physical challenges, proving that the most durable blueprints are often those drawn from unwavering conviction. The clearest view of the universe has always been from the deepest desert, under a canopy of stars unobscured by humidity or the glow of human settlement. Ancient astronomers made discoveries that would shape the world. In the Egyptian Sahara, at a site called Nabataean, a circle of standing stones stands as one of humanity's oldest known astronomical observatories. This was not a random arrangement of rocks. Each megalith was precisely positioned to align with the rising of key stars and the solstices, creating a celestial calendar carved into the earth. For the nomadic cattle herders who built it, this knowledge was a matter of survival. Tracking the subtle shifts in the night sky told them when the seasonal rains would arrive, signaling the time to drive their herds back to the playa, a temporary lake that would fill with life-giving water. Their entire annual cycle, from migration to ritual, was governed by this stone computer. The desert itself was their laboratory. The flat, stable horizon provided a perfect reference point for measuring the movements of celestial bodies. They used simple yet brilliant tools. A stone slab with a small carved notch could function as a sighting device, allowing a priest or astronomer to mark the exact spot where a particular star would rise above the horizon on a specific night of the year. The length and direction of shadows cast by a central pillar would chart the sun's journey across the seasons. This was empirical science built on generations of meticulous observation. Why were deserts the cradle of such advanced astronomy? The answer lies in the very harshness of the environment. In a land where water and food were scarce, predicting the seasons with absolute accuracy was not an academic exercise. It was the difference between life and death. A miscalculation of a week could mean missing the brief window for planting or arriving at a water source after it had dried up. This urgency drove a precision unmatched in more forgiving climates. The knowledge gained under these clear desert skies did not remain isolated. The calendars developed at places like Nabataean likely influenced the later, more famous astronomical achievements of the Egyptians along the Nile. The ability to predict the annual flooding of the river, which was tied to the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, was the very foundation of Egyptian civilization. This cosmic connection extended even to the realm of the dead. Tombs were often aligned with the North Star or other significant constellations, reflecting a belief that the soul's journey mirrored the eternal cycles of the heavens. The desert taught them that the universe was orderly and predictable, a concept that brought meaning to both their daily lives and their spiritual beliefs. Deep within the valley, the rock itself became the medium for eternity. Egyptian engineers did not simply bury their pharaohs, they engineered subterranean fortresses designed to outlast time itself. The first challenge was geological, choosing the right cliff face in the Valley of the Kings. They sought a specific layer of limestone, dense enough to be stable yet soft enough to carve, avoiding treacherous veins of flint or shale that could cause collapses. Teams of royal scribes would mark the tomb's intended path directly onto the rock wall, a blueprint for the darkness ahead. The work was deafening and relentless, with craftsmen using stone tools and fire to slowly chip away the mountain's heart. But the true genius was not in the excavation, but in the environmental control. Long, narrow shafts were carved from the burial chamber straight up to the surface. These were not for entry, but for air. They functioned as a passive ventilation system, allowing the incredibly dry desert air to circulate deep underground. This constant, subtle airflow was the key to preservation, preventing the buildup of moisture that would cause organic materials, from the mummy itself to the wooden funerary statues, to rot. The tombs were also masterclasses in security through misdirection. Builders constructed false doors, hidden pits, and corridors that doubled back on themselves, all designed to confuse and trap any would-be robbers. The final burial chamber was often accessed by a deep, vertical shaft that could be filled with rubble after the sarcophagus was sealed, creating a literal stone barrier. This raises a profound question about their ambition. How did they reconcile the need for absolute secrecy with the undeniable grandeur of a project that required the labor of hundreds for decades? The answer may lie in a cultural belief that the tomb was not a final resting place, but a machine for resurrection, its integrity as crucial as the rituals performed within it. This same obsessive drive for permanence, to defy the desert's tendency to erase, is etched into artifacts found thousands of miles away in the dry sands of the Tarim Basin. A shard of ancient desert pottery feels surprisingly light in the hand, its surface etched with the subtle texture of sand. This was not an accident of craftsmanship, but its very essence. Desert potters were material scientists, and their primary laboratory was the humble cooking pot. They faced a fundamental problem: how to create a vessel that could withstand the violent thermal shock of a cooking fire without cracking. Their ingenious solution was to mix the local clay with a generous amount of the very substance that surrounded them, sand. The coarse sand particles, or temper, acted like a microscopic reinforcement system within the clay. When the pot was heated, the clay and the sand expanded at different rates. The temper created millions of tiny buffers, absorbing the stress and preventing the catastrophic fractures that would destroy a vessel made of pure clay. This understanding of composite materials allowed for the creation of durable, everyday objects that were essential for survival, from storing precious water and grain to cooking meals. Their innovation did not stop at the clay mixture. In a land where wood was a scarce commodity, firing pottery presented another severe challenge. How do you achieve the searing temperatures needed to vitrify clay, around 1000 degrees Celsius, without wasting precious fuel? The answer lay in the design of their kilns. Across the Sahara and the Arabian Peninsula, potters developed updraft kilns, structures of brilliant efficiency. These were often simple, beehive-shaped chambers built from mud brick. The fire was lit in a pit below the chamber, and the heat would rise through a grate, enveloping the pottery before escaping through a vent at the top. This design created a natural convection current, ensuring every scrap of heat energy was used to maximum effect. The kilns were so well insulated and efficient that they could reach remarkably high temperatures with a surprisingly small amount of brushwood or dried dung. This was sustainable production in its most literal form, a perfect alignment of need, resource constraint, and technical skill. The final touch was artistry born from geology. Potters did not have access to a wide palette of imported minerals, so they became masters of their local landscape. they developed glazes using crushed local rocks and ashes. In some regions, the presence of copper ores produced stunning green and turquoise finishes. Elsewhere, manganese oxides created deep black patterns, and iron-rich clays yielded warm, earthy reds. These distinctive styles became trademarks, allowing archaeologists today to trace trade routes by following the distribution of a particular pottery style. A pot was not just a container, it was a carrier of cultural identity and an item of economic value. The level of technical skill embedded in these everyday objects forces a question for our own era of disposable goods. We surround ourselves with complex products whose material origins and life cycles are often a mystery. The desert potter, by contrast, held a deep, intimate knowledge of every substance they used, from the clay underfoot to the mineral that colored their glaze. Their legacy is a reminder that the most profound innovations are often those that solve basic human needs with elegance and resilience, turning simple earth into a vessel for civilization itself. The fabric of desert survival was woven on portable looms under vast, open skies. For the Bedouin and other nomadic peoples, textile production was not a matter of fashion, but a precise form of personal climate engineering. The iconic black robes often seen in imagery are a masterclass in material science. The loose, flowing cut is deliberate, creating a microclimate next to the skin. As the wearer moves, air circulates freely within the garment, pulling moisture away from the body and facilitating evaporative cooling, a natural air conditioning system powered by the slightest breeze. The choice of material was equally critical. Wool from hardy desert sheep was the fiber of choice, not despite the heat, but because of its unique properties. Its natural crimp creates tiny pockets of air that provide superb insulation against the shocking cold of desert nights, while also reflecting a significant portion of the sun's radiant energy during the day. This is thermoregulation in its purest form. The deep black color, often achieved with natural dyes like acacia bark or pomegranate rind, might seem counterintuitive, but studies suggest that the loose weave allows for sufficient airflow, that the heat absorbed by the dark pigment is carried away before it can transfer to the skin. Every stage of production was adapted to mobility. The looms were lightweight and could be disassembled in minutes, reflecting a life where the entire home could be packed onto a camel and moved with the seasons. The skills of spinning, dyeing, and weaving were deeply embedded in cultural identity, with intricate patterns and specific colors often denoting tribal affiliation, marital status, or regional origin. A garment was a walking resume, a portable home, and a life support system all in one. How did this textile engineering enhance mobility? It created a self-contained comfort zone that traveled with the individual, reducing dependence on finding immediate shelter from the sun or cold. This adaptive clothing is a direct parallel to other personal technologies, from the design of the sandal that protects feet from scorching sand to the headscarf that shields the face from wind and dust. It represents a philosophy where every object, no matter how humble, is honed by necessity into a tool of elegant resilience. This same ingenuity, applied to the human body, allowed for movement across landscapes that would otherwise be impassable, turning the individual into a perfectly adapted instrument of desert exploration. The desert kitchen was an alchemist's workshop, transforming scarcity into sustenance. Every morsel of food represented a victory over an environment intent on decay. The date palm stood as a pillar of this survival, its fruit dried to a crystalline sweetness in the relentless sun, becoming a compact energy source that could be stored for years. Meat, a precious and perishable resource, was preserved not with complex technology, but with the desert's own elements. Thin strips were cured in the dry, saline air or packed in salt extracted from ancient lake beds, a process that drew out moisture and created a durable, protein-rich staple. These were not mere recipes, they were sophisticated chemical reactions harnessed for longevity. But storage was as crucial as preservation. Ingenious underground pits, lined with straw and sealed with clay, created cool, stable microclimates that acted as natural refrigerators. Ceramic containers, their pores sealed with resin, kept grains safe from insects and rodents, turning a simple pot into a fortress for food security. Perhaps the most clever innovation was fermentation. Milk from goats or camels, difficult to keep fresh, was transformed into yogurt and cheese, extending its life and enhancing its nutritional value. Vegetables were pickled in brine, their sharp, tangy flavors adding vital variety to a limited diet. These methods ensured a stable nutritional base that could weather seasons of drought or failed harvests. This culinary ingenuity directly fueled the great projects of the desert. The laborers who carved the Qanat tunnels or raised the great houses of Choco Canyon did so on meals of durable bread, dried fruit, and salted meat, their physical strength a direct product of this preserved abundance. The question for our own time, with its complex global supply chains and alarming food waste, is profound. What ancient wisdom about local preservation and nutritional resilience have we forgotten in an age of convenience? The desert table teaches us that food security is not about abundance, but about intelligent management of what you have. This deep understanding of sustenance supported not just the body, but also the mind, leading to another critical form of preservation, the safeguarding of knowledge itself. A single blueprint is nothing without the hands to build it. The most brilliant engineering feat in the desert was not a tunnel or a temple, but the invisible architecture of human cooperation. To carve a city like Petra from solid rock or to lay a Qanat for dozens of miles required the synchronized labor of thousands, all working toward a common vision under a burning sun. This was a monumental feat of social organization, a system as carefully engineered as the structures it produced. Inscriptions found at these sites often list not just kings and gods, but the foremen, the stonemasons, and the water carriers. They reveal a sophisticated division of labor where tasks were specialized and responsibilities clearly defined. Teams of diggers would work in shifts, while skilled artisans carved the precise channels and mortarless joints. Overseers managed logistics, ensuring a constant supply of food, water, and tools to the work sites, which were often remote and inhospitable. But how did leaders command such effort in an era without coercion machinery? The answer lies not in the whip, but in a complex web of social and spiritual incentives. Labor was often framed as a sacred duty, a communal offering to the gods who controlled the rains and the harvest. Major construction projects were timed with seasonal festivals, turning back-breaking work into a collective ritual infused with music, shared meals, and a powerful sense of shared destiny. Workers were not mere cogs in a machine, they were participants in creating a legacy that would protect their children and honor their ancestors. They were compensated not just with rations, but with social status, land grants, or a share in the prosperity that the new infrastructure would bring. A functioning water system meant security for everyone, a reward that was tangible and immediate. This social cohesion was the true mortar that held these mega projects together. It was the belief that individual sacrifice served the greater good of the community, a belief so strong it could move mountains, literally. The enduring lesson is that our greatest structures are built not from stone, but from trust. When a society shares a unifying purpose, it can accomplish the impossible, turning the blueprints in the sand into monuments that stand for millennia. The desert wind carried more than just sand. It carried the precise words of a deal struck 1,000 miles away. In the vast silence of the Arabian deserts, the development of writing was not a luxury of scholars, but a practical tool for survival. Early scripts like Thamudic are etched into canyon walls and rock faces, acting as the road signs and public notices of their time. These inscriptions marked safe routes to hidden wells, recorded ownership of camels, or simply stated, "I was here," a human voice echoing across the centuries. This was a language stripped to its essentials, born from the need to communicate across the intimidating emptiness. The messages were short, but their impact was immense, creating a shared information network that bound scattered communities together. But for more complex information, the written word had to move. This was the role of the messenger, a figure of immense endurance and trust. Traveling on foot or by camel, these individuals carried royal decrees, trade agreements, and vital news across distances that could swallow lesser wills. Their most important tool was not a scroll, but their own memory. They relied on sophisticated oral traditions, structuring information into poetic rhythms or narrative sequences that were far easier to recall than a simple list of facts. A single messenger could hold the details of a multi-tribe alliance or the precise terms of a caravan contract entirely in their mind, delivering it verbatim to a chieftain weeks later. This system demanded incredible discipline and a deep cultural respect for the spoken word. How did language itself evolve to meet these demands? It became direct, rich with metaphors drawn from the immediate environment, and structured for clarity above all else. There was no room for ambiguity when a misunderstood message could lead a caravan to its doom or spark a conflict between oasis towns. The efficiency of this communication network was the nervous system of desert civilization, enabling everything from the coordination of a Qanat's construction to the timing of a major trade expedition. It allowed for the management of complex societies that were geographically dispersed but intellectually united. The legacy of these systems is written into our world today, in the very expectation that information should flow freely across any distance, turning isolated ideas into a shared foundation for progress. Sustainability was not a modern ideal, but the fundamental operating principle of every successful desert civilization. They understood that their environment offered a thin margin for error, and their survival depended on managing resources with a perspective that spanned generations, not just seasons. This long-term thinking manifested in practices of profound ecological wisdom. Nomadic pastoralists, for instance, did not simply wander. They practiced a sophisticated form of rotational grazing, moving their herds across vast territories in a precise cycle that mirrored the rhythms of rainfall and plant growth. They knew exactly how long a particular patch of desert scrub could support their animals before it needed years to recover. To overgraze was to starve your grandchildren, a consequence so dire it was often encoded in cultural taboos and oral law. These were not arbitrary rules, they were a kind of lived-in science, a conservation ethic forged by necessity. The same principle applied to harvesting wild plants. Communities that relied on native grains or fruits would deliberately leave a significant portion of the harvest untouched, ensuring the plants could recede and the animals that also depended on them would not be driven away. They thought in terms of the entire ecosystem, recognizing that their own survival was linked to the health of every other species in the web. What we might call sustainability today was for them simply intelligence. They had a visceral understanding of carrying capacity, the maximum number of people or animals a given piece of land could support without collapsing. This knowledge allowed societies to thrive for centuries, even millennia, without causing the kind of environmental degradation we associate with modern expansion. Their blueprint for survival was a masterclass in balance, asking not how much they could take, but how little they needed to live well. In our current era of resource depletion, This ancient insight poses an urgent question. Can we learn to see the world not as a warehouse of infinite supplies, but as a delicate and interconnected system with strict, non-negotiable limits? The true legacy of these civilizations may be the quiet reminder that the most advanced form of engineering is the one that leaves the land healthier than it was found. The timeless ingenuity of the desert is finding new life in the glass and steel of our modern cities. Architects and engineers, facing the urgent challenges of climate change and resource scarcity, are looking back to these ancient blueprints for inspiration. In the deserts of the Middle East, new constructions are incorporating the principles of the badger, the windcatcher. These modern versions are not simple replicas, but sophisticated systems that combine the passive cooling of ancient towers with solar-powered fans to enhance airflow, drastically reducing the energy needed for air conditioning. The goal is the same as it was 1,000 years ago, to create comfort using the natural elements, but the tools have evolved. Similarly, the wisdom of the Qanat is being revisited. Hydrologists are studying these gravity-fed tunnels as a model for sustainable groundwater management. In places where modern pumps have depleted aquifers, there is a growing movement to restore ancient Qanat systems. These restored channels offer a low-energy way to recharge groundwater levels naturally, proving that the old way might be the most advanced solution after all. This is not mere nostalgia, it is a practical recognition that these systems were designed for long-term survival. Universities around the world have begun to offer courses on traditional ecological knowledge, treating the collective wisdom of desert civilizations as a vital field of study. Students of architecture and environmental science now analyze the precise alignment of Pueblo great houses and the runoff farming techniques of the Nabateans, not as historical curiosities, but as viable strategies for a hotter, drier future. The core principles of passive cooling, water conservation, and local material use are being translated into contemporary green building standards. How can we weave these time-tested solutions into the fabric of our future designs? The legacy of desert engineering presents a profound challenge to our modern obsession with high-energy technological fixes. It asks us to consider whether true innovation lies not in inventing something entirely new, but in rediscovering the elegant intelligence of the past and adapting it for the world we must build tomorrow. Even the most brilliant blueprints leave tantalizing gaps in their design. For every answer these desert civilizations provide, they pose a new, more intriguing question. How exactly did the Nabatean engineers achieve such flawless gradients in their water channels, carving millimeter-perfect slopes over miles of rugged terrain without modern levels? What specific tools did the Garamantes employ to cut and dress their massive stone blocks with such clean, mortarless joins? The silent stones refuse to give up all their secrets, and this enduring mystery is precisely what fuels modern archaeology. Today, the search for answers has moved into orbit. Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar scan the deserts from above, revealing the ghostly outlines of structures completely invisible from the ground. These technologies act like X-ray vision for the landscape, uncovering entire lost settlements, the faint traces of ancient farm fields, and the sprawling networks of roads that connected them. Each new discovery is a piece of a colossal puzzle, forcing historians to redraw their maps and reconsider their theories. A recently identified complex in the Arabian desert, for instance, might suggest a previously unknown kingdom that controlled a critical section of the incense trade. An excavation in the Sahara could uncover a workshop filled with stone tools, finally revealing the precise techniques used to shape those monumental tombs. These are not just academic exercises, they are active investigations that capture the public imagination, inspiring both professional researchers and dedicated amateur sleuths who scour satellite photos from their home computers. What might future technologies, like advanced artificial intelligence capable of pattern recognition on a massive scale, reveal about the true extent of these civilizations? The story of the desert is not a closed book. It is a living narrative with new chapters being written with every pass of a satellite and every stroke of an archaeologist's trowel. The search for answers ensures that these ancient voices are never fully silenced, their ingenuity continuing to speak to us across the centuries. The silent stones of the desert are finding their voice once more, not through archaeologists alone, but through the hands of local communities. In remote oases across North Africa, you can now find villagers, both young and old, working together to clear the silt from ancient Fagara tunnels. These are not government-led excavations, but grassroots movements to revive the very systems that sustained their ancestors. The knowledge is being passed down directly, from elders who remember the old ways to teenagers wielding modern tools alongside traditional ones. They are not just restoring a water channel, they are rebuilding a cultural identity and securing their water independence in an increasingly arid world. This revival is gaining crucial support from international organizations who see these sites as living classrooms. UNESCO designations for places like the Aflaj irrigation systems of Oman bring global attention and funding, transforming forgotten engineering into a source of local pride and economic opportunity through cultural tourism. The effort extends beyond physical structures to the very words that describe them. Linguists and anthropologists are working urgently with tribal elders to document oral histories, capturing the precise terms for ancient construction techniques and the stories embedded in the landscape. These are not just tales, they are operational manuals encoded in poetry and myth. A single song might hold the secret to identifying the right type of clay for sealing a cistern, or a proverb might explain how to read the stars for the optimal time to begin digging. How can we, as a global audience, support these vital initiatives? The answer may lie in conscious choices, from visiting these heritage sites with respectful tour operators to supporting NGOs that fund apprenticeship programs. When a young person learns to build a perfect arch without mortar, they are not just learning a trade, they are becoming a link in a chain of knowledge that stretches back millennia. This work bridges the deepest past with the most pressing future, proving that the most valuable treasure these civilizations left behind is not gold, but the living blueprint for resilience itself. From the Qanats of Persia to the windcatchers of Egypt, these civilizations demonstrated that impossibility is merely a challenge waiting for a blueprint. Their story is not a relic of the past, but a living library of solutions for our own time. As we confront a planet growing hotter and drier, with water sources dwindling and energy demands soaring, the wisdom etched into these desert stones speaks with urgent clarity. The ancient engineers did not fight their environment with brute force. They engaged it in a subtle dialogue, harnessing the quiet power of gravity, the steady path of the sun, and the constant flow of the wind. They built societies that lasted for millennia because their designs were in harmony with the world, not in opposition to it. This is the profound lesson they leave for us. In an age of complex technological fixes, their legacy is a call to seek elegant simplicity, to find answers that work with nature's logic. Their greatest innovation was a mindset, a way of seeing scarcity not as a barrier but as the very source of creativity. Which of these desert marvels resonates most with you? Was it the subterranean rivers of the Qanat, the celestial navigation of the Bedouin, or the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela? Share your thoughts and join the conversation below. And if you are inspired by these blueprints in the sand, subscribe to continue exploring the world's greatest historical